So I want to speak about a sentence that Neville used. And he always said this phrase sort of like it's denied by your senses, denied by your reason, assume the wish fulfilled, even though it is denied. And, the first part we can all kind of agree on that our imagination can see beyond what our senses see. We all can agree with that. Our sense perception is limited, but our divine perception is infinite. We can kind of see whatever we want in our minds. And even though your outer world may be showing you something that is opposite of what you want, Neville tells us to not depend on our senses, but depend on the imaginative man within. And that's who dictates your I ams. Because the question really is, which world are you going to allow to dictate who you are? The one within or the one without? The one within will define you, but the one within, you get to define yourself. Which one are you going to allow to define you? And but he also says this one phrase after, which is, deny your reasoning. So, in my opinion, your reasoning is what is stopping you from experiencing a heaven within you. It's your reasoning that keeps you in bondage. Because your reasoning, what it's doing, the moment you assume you are something, and then you start getting those questions like, yeah, but what if this happens? And how do you know you're not going to mess it up again? Or how do you know the bridge will be good? Or what if it's bad? Or all this reasoning. You must abandon all of that. It has no place for imagination. Because what it's actually doing is that it's keeping you bondage in fear and bondage in your limited state. So if you want to expand yourself, you have to abandon your reasoning. That means abandoning anything that comes into argumentation or conflict with your wish fulfilled. So if you say you're desiring, to be freed from this problem in your life, okay? Well, knowing consciousness is the only reality, the problem is in consciousness. So you assume you have that freedom in consciousness. But the moment you assume you have that freedom, you start to get thoughts like, well, how do I really know I have it? How do I, what if I don't really have it? Or what if you're still thinking that from this position, your reasoning is still making you think in terms of separation instead of reflection. And then you can't really experience being freed from it, because you're allowing your reasoning to stop you. And things go away in the mind. They don't ever die, but they go away, if you will, when your attention is placed off of it and placed upon something else. So you must become very focused on actually being who you want to be. Stop desiring that you want to be it, but actually be it. You have to let go of your reasoning. And reasoning is very convincing because it points to things that are truthful, right? Like your past or things that you made mistakes on, or your fears and worries of today or of tomorrow. I mean, your reasoning is pretty convincing. But if you can see, again, don't be so attached to the reasoning. Find the cause of the reasoning. And the cause is you. And you create from reasoning too. You keep yourself in bondage that way. Now, here's what I do. I want to explain, how do I imagine? So, let's just take an example. I want to be at the mall, okay? Right now I'm recording this, but I want to be at the mall. So what I do is I see myself, which is my imaginative man, at the mall, okay? Now, I can do one or two things. I can either say, well, this is just imaginary. It's not really real. It's I'm just conjuring this up in my head, but I'm really just recording, and that's not real. Or I can grant it reality and say it is real and experience the reality of it. Now, this is where me and Neville differ. Neville was very, very big on adding sensory vividness. I am I understand why you would do that, and I think you should. I mean, why wouldn't you want to make your desire feel as real to you? I mean, why not? You get to really experience it if it's what you really want. But I have found actually doing the opposite works better, is if you assume the reality first of the scene, then sensory vividness sort of just develops on its own. That's what I've noticed, because for me, when I heard about adding sensory vividness, that caused me to have it was such a strain on my mind. It would make me feel like I'm not doing it right, or like how much is enough. And I have found that if you just abandon your reasoning, because your reasoning is what is keeping you from thinking it's not real. You're convincing yourself it's not real because it's in your imagination. So, but if you remove your reasoning, don't allow it to penetrate you with any kind of feeling, you just kind of ignore it, you just act like it isn't there, you can actually start to experience that I'm at the mall, literally. The more you let go of reasoning, the more it starts to feel real to you. So, and I abandon all my memories. Like, I abandon everything. I give it all up. I give my present conception up. Like, I give this body up. This body cannot get me to the mall right now. It's doing this recording. But my inner man, he can go to the mall whenever he wants. And that's who I am. That's who I think I am. And where he goes, this body will go. Because this body is simply it's just a reflection. It's just an expression. So, when I say I abandon my memory, I mean I don't allow myself to think, well, in your past you did X, Y, and Z, and therefore you can't, whatever. That's just sabotaging yourself. So I completely let all that go. I don't think about my past. I don't let it affect my whatever it is I want to experience. And I can experience anything. Now, that is true freedom in the mind, is being able to experience anything as if it's reality. And what that requires for you to do is to abandon your reasoning. And to abandon really just your reasoning, because you can think of memories as also, you use your memories. But I like to just call it just reasoning. You abandon this, then you can start to experience things in the mind as real. You can stop being so afraid of them. It's your reasoning that's keeping you in bondage of fear. There's nothing to be afraid of in imagination. I mean, it's funny because we tend to do this thing where we say things like, well, I'm being at the mall right now and it's so lovely. It's just imagination. But then when we start conjuring up fearful thoughts, it's no longer just imagination. It's this, I can't get rid of these negative thoughts. They're affecting my body and I'm panicking. But on the other, side of the coin, you're telling me that it's just imagination when it comes to something good. Yet when it comes to something bad, it's panic attack. You see what I'm trying to say? How like we kind of give credit to one, we credit one reality, we don't credit the other one reality. They're both realities. But if you can see that you're the cause of everything in imagination, you don't have to become afraid. Now the question becomes this. Well, let's say I'm not afraid, and I do assume that I am. How do I know it's going to express itself? Now this question comes from the idea that life's happening to you. So you're questioning if it's going to happen. Remember, life is not happening to you. It's coming from you. This is not even the law of attraction. I read no literature on the law of attraction. I don't read that stuff. So I'm not like, I don't have any of their thoughts. I just seen it from Neville's teachings and my own practice. You're not attracting stuff. Stuff's coming from you. So the moment you feel whatever it is you want to feel, you're calling forth its expression from you. You can think of it this way, like the moment you feel safe, and you start to feel safe and safe and safe, you are calling forth safe people into your world. It's coming from you. You're bringing them out of you. And then that's how I've seen it play out, is that the moment you assume you are something, you're calling forth its expression. Because you are the expressor of life. You are if you want to take an assumption with you tonight, to sleep, is that you are reality itself. You are reality itself. And I mean that. You will feel an immense amount of freedom knowing that you are the reality, that it's not happening to you, that you're in this drama and you get to play in it how you want to play. But you have to allow yourself to play and stop being afraid of it. And if you know it's all happening from you, from within, and there's nothing to be afraid of from within because you are the cause of it all, then you can start causing the life you want. You can start planting the seeds you want to plant. But if man doesn't know who he is, he's going to try to use the imagination, and he's going to be really worried. Like if your safety depends on the external world and not from the world within, what you'll do with this information is that you'll give yourself all the feelings you want of safety, of love, and respect. And the moment you re-enter into the outer world, you become afraid and you sabotage everything you've done within you. And you no longer can walk in that fulfillment because you're letting the outer world dictate your freedom. You're letting the outer world dictate how safe you are because you're viewing it as separate from you. You have to see it as it's coming from you, not at you. It's not coming at you. And this, to me, is one of the most powerful things you can learn from Neville's work, is that you're not attracting. It's coming out of you. That's who you are. And if you can think of it, honestly, I would if I were you, I would rid myself from the idea that I'm attracting stuff. Because things are coming out of you. That's how I view this. Is at the moment I assume I'm in a state, people in my life, you can't judge after appearances. What they look like doesn't matter. They're in a state of mind that represents something about you. That's why they're there. You're surrounded by states. And the moment you assume a state, more states come out from you because man, surrounds himself with his own image. How can that be that man surrounds himself with his own image? Because it's not physical image, it's the image of his mind. He surrounds himself with whatever happens to fulfill his own mental image of himself. So if he finds himself worthless, you bet he will be around people who will confirm his worthlessness. It will happen. If he assumes that he's respected and listened to, you bet he'll be surrounded by people who will listen. But he's surrounded not, I say people, but they're really just states. Like when you marry someone, you're not marrying their body. You guys are linked up on each other's states. It's not really each other, it's just you. I know it's confusing, but you want to get to oneness all the time. You want to get to being the cause. Because, for example, if I had a dream recently where I woke up in the middle of the night and I woke up screaming. I was just yelling at somebody in my mind. I was very angry with them. And I remember when I woke up, I was convinced, absolutely convinced, that dream was happening to me. I was 100% convinced. It was. If you asked me, do you think this is happening within you? Or do you think this is coming from outside of you? I would 100% say it's coming outside of me. But then I woke up and I realized it was just a dream happening within me. How can that be? How could it be that I experienced something that was so real, just as real as this, yet it was happening all within me? And if you told me, well, in the dream, if you told me, hey, I want you to assume this is just a dream that's happening to you, I don't think I could do it because I'd be like, no, this is reality. This is happening to me. This isn't just a dream. And then I come to find out that it was a dream. I found out it was. I was completely wrong. That thing that felt so real was actually happening within me. Now, I'm trying to tell you that that's the same in this world. Wake up and realize that it's just happening from you. That it's coming from within to without. It's not the other way around. And if you could do it that way, you won't have this self-sabotaging coming anymore because who's sabotaging? It's just you. Nothing can sabotage unless you allow the sabotage to be there. And if you imagine you are something, it comes from you, so you don't have to feel like you don't have to imagine and wait for someone to come give it to you. That's not how this works. It's coming from you. Life is coming from you. You are the reality itself. And you can tell you are because in imagination, you can have all these thoughts that don't really matter, but they become alive the moment you really enter into them and occupy them. And what I do is I assume that, let's go back to the mall. I assume that the mall's real. But my reasoning mind will tell me no, but I just ignore my reasoning mind completely. I just assume it's real. There is a dream where you're experiencing exactly what you want to experience, and you're feeling exactly what you want to feel. Find that. Maybe you want to, for example, I had a thing where I always felt like I had a bad self-image. So when I was around people, I would wonder if they're seeing that side of me, and I would get nervous. And that's me viewing everyone as separate from me. But in imagination, what I found was that I can be in this exact same position in my mind, but feel entirely confident in myself. There's a version of me where I am experiencing that. Now the question is, do I believe it? That's the condition that's placed on me. Can I believe that's real? That's all that's asked of me. Not to figure it out, not to do anything. I don't worry about any of that stuff. I just ask myself, do I believe this is real of me? That this part of me inside of me is very confident. Is that real? And I'd say yes. So then the more I abandon my reasoning, it becomes more real to me. Then I become it. You can think of it as God abandoned his reasoning. He abandoned who he was to become man and completely forgot. He forgot his memory. You think of it that way. Well, we do the same thing. Like when I want to be a new state, I must abandon. You want to move from the state of poverty to the state of having more money. You must abandon the memory of ever being poor. Abandon the memory of being it. Abandon who you are. Leave the body alone. It can't do it. It's useless. It's limited. And go within to the unlimited or the limitless and take what you want in there and be that person who's in there. Assume you are that person. And what you'll find is that person's God inside of imagination can do all things. And the more you associate with that being, what you'll find is reality, you'll go, wow, reality actually is happening from me. It's not necessarily happening to me. And what you'll find is fear has no place in imagination. Fear is an illusion. It's something you construct from thinking the outer world's real. That's what it is. You're afraid of this person and that person. You're not realizing you're afraid of states that are reflecting you. You can't be afraid of those things. All you have to do is change your state, and then automatically people change around you. Because life's happening from you. So I take it from more of I always try to find the cause, and I'm the cause. If I start thinking that I'm attracting things, then I start thinking of something outside of me. And I don't think that way. I think that I assume it within myself, and from me, my assumption expresses. And that to me is a much more powerful and potent way of understanding that when I imagine, you don't have to be afraid that something will sabotage you. That's what I was always afraid of. I was constantly afraid of something coming in the way, and the next thing you know, oh great, I have my desire, but it will be ruined somehow. I used to always think everything would have to be ruined somehow. I just grew up that way. But that's an assumption. And I'm the cause of that. And that makes me feel I credit it to imagination. That's what I mean by the cause, is that I go within my life, and all my experiences, I just give credit to the imagination. I say, you did this, you did this. You did this good, and you did this bad. I give all the credit to you for my life, because if I can give that the credit, then I can also realize that I can change that. That's what I must rely. I try to make my life rely entirely upon imagination. And the more I do that, the less afraid I become. And the less afraid I become, it becomes easier to imagine everything I want. And then my body starts to react, and I start to have a very peaceful body from it. And I start to respond and react that way in my life. So I know from experience, if you change within, you change yourself completely. But to change requires an abandonment of your reasoning. You can't reason your way into a state. I'm going to tell you this. If you're looking for some logic and reasoning type of article, I'm not going to give it to you. That you will not get it from me, because I don't reason. That's what I don't do. If you're looking for some peer-reviewed research, I'm not going to give it to you, because I literally don't reason my way into states. I just assume I am it. I don't care if it's real or it's going to happen. I don't think about anything like that. I simply just enter into it, because it's your reasoning that keeps you in bondage. It's your reasoning that makes you feel limited. It's your reasoning that doesn't allow you to experience heaven within you. That's what must be abandoned entirely. It's your reason that makes you think you have lack. It's your reason that keeps you in desire. It's your reason to think that you aren't a being who can be fulfilled, who can live in fulfillment. I said this recently in my post. I wrote that a man, or I should say, to stop desiring, because if you desiring is like eating maggots in imagination. And you can think of it this way: a king in this world who desires is a worm being fed to the birds. But a man who lives in fulfillment is a god. Now, really reflect on what I'm saying there. Don't live in desire. Don't be a king. Yeah, okay, you have some status, but you are hungry after power, and you can't seem to ever obtain it. You don't have to be like that. Power is not in the world. Power is from within. It's not a position in the world. It's nonsense. They don't have power. They're desiring power. They're still living in desire. You don't want to live in desire. You want to realize that you don't have to live, not by suppressing your desires, but by giving them all to you. God says that in the scripture says, if I was hungry, I wouldn't tell you. The world is mine, all that's within it. All right. So you can think of it that way, as being God in the mind. That's how you must think of it, is that if you were hungry in imagination, would you honestly tell anybody? Would you ask someone to give you something in imagination? Be honest, would you? No, because if you were hungry, you would just bring up whatever meal you would want. If you were, would you really wait for someone to tell you you are something to be it? No. I would become it, and then they would see me that way. There's nothing to wait for with an imagination. I don't need to beg someone. I'm not a beggar. If I was hungry, I wouldn't tell anybody. I would just imagine myself being fed. Everything's mine. If I wanted to be freed from this, I don't have to ask anybody or wait for someone to give it to me in imagination. I just give it to myself. I'm the cause here. It's all mine. And really take that, realize that those are your words. The world's mine, all that's within it. And if I was hungry, I wouldn't tell you. Those are your words. In imagination, that's the man in imagination's words. If he's hungry, he'll just eat. If he's desiring, I don't have to beg you to give me my desire. I'll just give it to myself. And when you start to live this way, you start to become an actual individual. You start to actually feel unique. You feel that this entire experience was for you, for your own awakening. And there's nothing more important than I can say than to abandon your reasoning. It's the thing that keeps you in bondage, and I mean that. If you want to take something from what I'm saying, as somebody who's used his reasoning to sabotage his whole life, I'm telling you, remove reasoning. It's just coming from fear and limitation. You cannot expand with your reasoning. Abandon it and start to expand within. Don't wonder if the mall's real, or if it's actually happened, or if you really are, or if you left your old state, or if it really will express. Remember that life, your reality itself, and reality is coming from you. And you are the cause of all things within you. Understand that, and you won't feel these deep fears anymore. So, I can speak all day about this, and I mean that, about abandoning your reasoning. It's the most important thing I can think of to talk about. You have to, a perfect example of abandoning the reasoning is revision. Suppose you got into an argument with someone, and you want to revise that at nighttime, but you can't seem to let go of the feelings of anger. What you must realize is that experience came from imagination. Credit it to imagination, and that's where you change it. So you fall asleep that night, and you stop thinking that the world's happening at you, or it's coming at you, or it's happening to you. Notice that came from imagination as well, and that's where you change it. But in order to change it and accept the imaginative day, revised day, you have to abandon your reason, because your reason will tell you, no, you didn't have this day. This is just an imaginary day. The reason, which is really Satan in the scriptures, that will always try to get you to see your desire or see the imagination as fiction. That's really what its goal is. But when you see that you're the cause of reason, you can let it go. So what you do is you accept the revised day as if that's the day you had. It's not going to make sense. I'm not telling you to. I'm telling you to not make it make sense. I'm telling you to abandon your reasoning and completely feel that you are what you want to be now. Start living it. You can't live in fulfillment with always trying to reason your way into fulfillment. You must just be fulfilled. I've tried to make it reasonable to do this, to test this, but to actually occupy a state, you must abandon the reasoning. So I hope that, and it could be for anything. I mean, you want to assume that not a thing in this world can embarrass you. Abandon your reasoning and assume it. You want to assume that you're fulfilled and you are just this confident being. Abandon your reasoning and fulfill it. You want to assume that things are always working out for you. Abandon your reasoning and assume it. That you're intelligent. Assume it. You don't have to wait upon anyone to tell you. In fact, they will come because man surrounds himself with his own image. So you don't have to be afraid of anybody or worry that this person's not getting their deserved penalty, or don't worry about people. Everyone's getting exactly what they're imagining. So are you. You just focus on yourself. You focus on what you want to be and who you want to be inside yourself. You make yourself reign king in the mind. Everything comes down to your orders. And you won't have this fear. You don't need to fear anything in imagination. So I know this video was a little bit longer than usual, but I felt like I needed to share this. I hope this frees you. I can speak more about this in the future.